This is the biodiversity ecology experiment by Yajat, part E. So for this, we had a question that is, what is the effect of soil moisture on plant growth? Um, Now we know that plants often need varying degrees of soil moisture and water to grow, as well as a range of other factors. So now we had to figure out how much they would actually need. So we had to devise a hypothesis as to how this worked, right? So we looked at things like, is it the higher moisture content that correlates with a higher level of vegetation, or is it the moisture content of the soil indicating a higher amount of vegetation? But we eventually decided on an increase in local vegetation indicates a higher soil moisture level, because this encompasses both of the aspects of the proposed hypotheses. This experiment required minimal testing equipment. We only had one moisture testing probe, as well as a quadrat, not a quadrant, and a random number generator to find out random spots to dig. The method was simple. We threw a quadrat randomly at an area containing soil and would obviously be capable of having vegetation. We counted the squares with vegetation inside the quadrat, and we divided that number by 25, as that was the number of squares inside the quadrat. Using a random number generator, we found 3 squares from the quadrant to test. We inserted the soil moisture probe at least 3 centimeters into the ground, and then we recorded the soil moisture, and we categorized it as low, medium, or high. Low is less than 20%, medium is greater than 40 but smaller than 60%, and high is greater than 80%. Now we repeated this process until we had all 3, low, medium, and high moisture variance. This is an image of us doing the testing. Now, the results that we got were pretty representative, pretty similar to what we thought we would have based on part A, with an increase in vegetation levels, also increasing the soil moisture level. This obviously corroborates our hypothesis, which likely proves it correct. Now, we did also notice that this would likely have a problem of cause and causation, which I'll talk about later, but the r² value of the line between these things is really small, which means it's likely quite accurate. Now, the data here is, by the way, in arbitrary units, which is also another limitation between 0 and 1200, where 0 is completely dry and 1200 is literally just water and no soil. Now, the problems with limits and validity that we had were quite emphasized. We didn't have a problem with accuracy, as I told you before. The r² value was something like 0.998. So that was not a problem, but we did have problems with understanding what the actual cause was. And we understood that at higher moisture levels there was higher vegetation, but we don't know what came first. Was it the higher moisture level that caused the plants to move in, or was it the plants that had moved in prior that had increased the moisture level? Because while the while the former does makes more sense, the latter can also happen as plants tend to stabilize soil with their roots, making it easier for soil to hold water. That's a possible reason. Obviously, another mistake that we made was not getting the number of flowers and other pollination elements on that were in the quadrats counted, because those indicate a healthy local area, which would likely be required for the long-term survival of a habitat. Also, we didn't get what species of plants there were, because different species of plant require different amounts of water, with plants like cactuses and succulents requiring very little water, and plants like rice and other wetland grasses requiring quite high moisture. Also, we had a different problem, which was that it had rained just 2 hours prior to collecting the data. That error is likely just systematic, and because it affected all of the values that we collected, so it doesn't change the outcome of this experiment. Um, the plants that we did survey, however, were short grasses and flowers. Now, possible improvements that we could have made to this experiment included changing the hypothesis and method so that we would instead categorize based on the moisture level instead of the vegetation level. So in this case, our x our x value was our independent variable was our vegetation percentage, but I think it would be much better and much more representative if we had something that was based upon the moisture level, because there are places with high moisture level that have very little vegetation growing on it, and that likely wasn't completely looked at in this, and would have been likely major a major contributor, so we probably should have looked at that. Also, there was a problem with the collection of the units, because 0 being dry and 1200 being saturated doesn't really make much sense if it was calibrated differently. Those tools also don't give an answer that is standardized, so that was likely a major problem that we faced in the experiment. So that was something to look out for. As well as this, our team worked really well, despite us having some problems with attendance. All of us having problems with attendance, we still managed to pull through. Everyone put their best foot forward, and we got this done in time. And that is it for the Part E evaluation.